And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's get into more of these top headlines. We do have some breaking news. Remember, I was referring to the fact that we're waiting for Israeli and Iranian confirmation of that very ceasefire the president announced here. I want to put this up from the foreign minister of Iran, Araghchi, there, saying, as Iran has repeatedly made clear, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. He says, as of now, there is no agreement, in quotations, on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. However, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. He says the final decision on the cessation of our military operations will be made later. So the Iranian foreign minister saying no agreement with Israel. We'll see on whether or not that changes. In the meantime here, I want to bring into my conversation our friend and colleague there, Connor Hansen in New York, with the latest. Connor, good to see you here. Everyone's talking about this ceasefire announced by President Trump. What more do we know?
Hi, Andrew. Well, that's right. You said it. Very interesting comments from Iran's foreign minister. But President Trump, as we know, said Israel and Iran have fully agreed to a ceasefire, ending what he's now calling the 12-day war. The news came just hours, of course, after Iran tried to retaliate against the U.S. for its strikes on the country's nuclear program. Announcing a ceasefire on social media, President Trump wrote, quote, "This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world."
The president really hit the reset button and said, look, let's actually produce long-term peace for the region.
Earlier in the day, Iranian missiles could be seen being blown up in the sky above Qatar. The president says no one was hurt and there was hardly any damage at the El Udeid military base. Gulf nations like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE condemned Iran's strike on the U.S. base. The U.S. expected retaliation after bombing 3 of Iran's nuclear sites. New footage released by the Air Force shows the B-2 bombers used in that mission. Before the ceasefire announcement, Israel said it carried out its most extensive airstrikes on Iran.
When you understand the enormous war machine that was built on the Iranian nuclear program by Iran, you understand what an enormous risk it is to the world.
And President Trump made his announcement around 6 p.m. Eastern time, of course, right in the middle of the night over in the Middle East, saying the ceasefire would take effect 6 hours later. Their hope is in about 24 hours or at some point tomorrow, this war will be completely over. Andrew.
All right, Connor Hansen there live for us in New York. Connor, always good to see you. Talk soon.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, in the meantime here, do want to get in what we just brought to you about 5 minutes ago, this post by the Iranian foreign minister on X, Abbas Araghchi, saying this, as Iran has repeatedly made clear, he says, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. He says, as of now, there is no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. He says, however, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. The final decision on the cessation of our military operations will be made later. Now, moments ago, there's a follow-up. He said this, that the military operations of our powerful armed forces to punish Israel for its aggression continued until the very last minute at 4 a.m. He says, together with all Iranians, I thank our brave armed forces who remain ready to defend our dear country until their last drop of blood there. So I think it got cut off, but you get the gist of it. It says that we're getting confirmation from the Iranian foreign minister that the ceasefire, at least from their side, seemingly in effect. In the meantime, though, we do want to bring into the conversation right now my friend and colleague, Iranian-American journalist Alina Shirazi. She joins me. Alina, so good of you to be with us here. We're going to get in on, I kind of previewed with our viewers, the perspective of everyday Iranians. You've been in touch with so many of them about how they are feeling right now. With this news today, that is breaking still, very fluid, about the ceasefire announced by President Trump between Iran and Israel. Have you heard any reaction from on the ground in Iran? A sigh of relief? Still uncertainty? What about it?
Andrew, thanks so much for having me. I mean, it's really a mixed bag here. I mean, right now, you heard from the foreign minister of Iran saying not officially a ceasefire, but it basically is one. So a little bit of mixed messaging there. But really, what I'm hearing from Iranians so far is we are not being, rained down with bombs and missiles. So they feel a little bit of a relief there. But for them, the strikes have stopped, but the terror continues with the regime, with the Iranian government. And so there was a little bit of hope that, from what I'm hearing from Iranians, there might have been, at the end of the day, a sort of light at the end of the tunnel for them, something to gain from all of this bloodshed, from all of this war. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of Iranian Americans, the diaspora, a lot of Iranians inside the country saying, well, what was this all for? I've always said, and foreign policy analysts have also said, that countries don't have friends, they have interests. And so you're kind of seeing this with, of course, the president trying to defend national security and make sure that Iran's nuclear sites have been practically decimated so they won't have the enriched uranium. That was their goal. Andrew, I know that I'm sure you saw President Trump also post on Truth Social, essentially saying that he hopes, make America great again, make Iran great again. Make Iran great again, rather. So there was that sense of, will there be a sort of, boost for the Iranian people? Will the regime, is there a light at the end of the tunnel for the people? Just really a mixed bag of emotions right now is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because I've been asking some of our experts throughout the last week. There was this somewhat, in my view, false conventional wisdom forming that, in the wake of Israel's strikes preemptively on the country of Iran, that your everyday Iranians, your rank and file, would just kind of organically rise up against the regime. We have not seen that at all. I do want to show some of the messages you have received, though. We're going to show some of them to our audience here, and I'm going to do my best to read them and kind of prompt you, Alina. So we have this one here. I'm going to read it. This individual, we're not going to name them. They're going to remain anonymous, says this to you in a text message, that even now ordinary Iranians, those who reject the regime, can be heard nightly shouting death to Khamenei from their rooftops, echoing the same defiance seen during the Woman Life Freedom protests when crowds chanted, "Our enemy is right here, they lie when they say it's America." So this kind of gives a sense of the feeling. We don't even know. I mean, the president says he knows where Ayatollah Khamenei is. There's some reporting out there to suggest he's hunkered down in his bunker. Haven't heard from him since the ceasefire was announced earlier today. But that's just a sense of how some Iranians are feeling, that they want the Ayatollah gone. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you just look at the facts, I mean, over 200 women have been executed in Iran since 2007. And so there's no question it is a brutal and oppressive regime, as told to me by Iranians who are inside the country. And I was with you last for the Mahsa Amini protest, the Freedom Life movement, where we thought we were seeing a sort of watershed moment. Andrew, and I remember you asked me, do you think this is a turning point for the Iranian people? And so I'm not sure if it's, the entire the entire book has been closed, or is this just a couple of pages flipping through? But I know that, a majority of Americans are, they see their Iranian friends, they hear from their Iranian friends, they know what's going on inside of the country. And the fundamental issue really in Iran right now is truly the deep disconnect, between the Islamic Republic, the regime, as well as the desires of really much of its population. And that's really a rare thing for a country to have, that huge disconnect where you see from the top to the bottom that sort of trickle down effect where people are still living their lives under the watchful eye of the Iranian government. And so what happens, from here moving forward is really anybody's question. But a lot of Iranians messaging me within the past, couple of minutes, essentially saying, well, is there any possible fear of an even worse retaliation from the government after this, because they see this as sort of an even bigger, step outside of the zone of what has really been allowed inside of the country.
Yeah, just some more messages that you've gotten that you sent in to me. One individual said this to you, that we are alive, but we are not living. That even if they have moved military supplies and equipment, they do not inform the people where they have placed them, so we can avoid those areas. Therefore, it's unclear how close the danger is to us. She says, or rather he or she says to you, that Alina, the political climate is very dire. Please do not mention my name anywhere, as I might become a suspect and be arrested. Several people have already been detained, and some have been executed. She says, I pray to God to free us from this evil. You and I, to your point, last spoke, I believe in spring of 2022 during the Masa Amini protests. And you can make the argument that kind of the outpouring in the streets was much more pronounced than it even is over the last 12 days. We really haven't seen much of that in the last 12 days on the streets of Tehran or other cities in Iran. Do you think that's due to the fact that Iranians are so vigilant, so terrified, so scared, so uncertain?
Absolutely. And despite that, a lot of them are still stepping up, and a lot of people messaging me saying, we need you to help elevate our voices. A lot of, media that we've been seeing, coverage, hasn't been able to really get access to people. And if you want to know what's happening inside of a country, the best people to speak with would, of course, be the people that are living there. And so a lot of them, of course, messaging me saying, we don't have internet access. We are still extremely censored. The censorship coming out of the government is extreme during everything we've been seeing for the past few days. There have been some humanitarian organizations trying to send Starlink satellites to people so they can have internet. But as you can see from some of those messages, people saying we're in, a dire situation. I don't know where some of my family members are. I don't know how to reach them. They're afraid. They're nervous. I believe that the Iranian people are brave, but the cost of all of this, of war, of speaking up, is very large. It's great.
Yeah. I want to read this one because this struck out to me, and I think it's lost maybe sometimes on viewers and everyday Americans. They might forget that the information pipeline doesn't exist in Iran. One of these Iranians sent you this, that I'm infinitely proud to have compatriots like you. I want to thank you for your utmost kindness in checking on us and staying updated about our situation, saying they limited internet access a few days ago, and ultimately access to international internet has been cut off, although the internet was already filtered before this. Various explosion sounds are being heard, especially around midnight and close to dawn. However, as far as I know, in Isfahan, Israel has only targeted nuclear facilities and munitions infrastructure. Alina, we kind of take that for granted in the U.S. media. We get updates, every 30 seconds about every big story of the day, or not so much for Iranians, do they? Do they even know the scope of what is taking place, what Israel has done, what the U.S. has done?
Not quite. Not quite. I think a lot of people haven't been leaving some of the safe zones that they found. A lot of Iranians messaging me saying that they're too afraid to go outside, but that they'll try and send me photos and videos if they can. Some people sending me audio notes saying I can use them if I distort their voices. The scope of the damage really hasn't been seen yet. Of course, they hit those 3 nuclear sites. They hit Natanz, Fordow, and Esfahan. But of course, some of those are where people actually live. They're not just underground nuclear enrichment sites. The kind of size and scope of that is quite large. And so not only that, but not being able to, as you mentioned, get information is such a frightening thing. I mean, some people saying that their own government wasn't telling them, hey, you can go here to evacuate. These are safe zones. You should be out of here by this time, evacuate this city. Some of the people I spoke with said they had to rely on the IDF to translate, in Farsi to tell them where to go. And they said that they couldn't believe that they were relying on the IDF at that time for information because they just couldn't get any. People asking me, what should I do? It's such a horrible situation because truthfully, I mean, as much information as I can get, that's kind of course, that's what it means to be a journalist, as well as amplifying people's voices. But, how much can I tell them? It's really, really been a tumultuous few days for sure. And actually something interesting too, people telling me even from, America or the UK, calling some of their family members in Iran. And then there's an automated voice message, which is just very, very scary. It's just an automated voice message of a woman. This man called his uncle, and it's a woman who answers the phone, and it's an automated message saying to breathe and relax and to take a deep breath and that better things are on the way. And there's, perhaps a bit of hacking going on between some of the wireless transmissions. That's something to explore. Not sure what was going on there, but I've gotten several messages saying that that's been happening.
Wow.
Very, very eerie situation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Alina, just lastly, in the wake of all of this, amidst it, there's been a lot of talk about regime change. And, I would venture to say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for Iranians, that there's a failure of imagination at play, that they can't kind of conceive what an Iran would be like without the theocracy, the Ayatollah in charge. And that leads me to my next question, because I want to introduce this person. We've shown him last week, and you can tell our viewers who he is, because this name keeps popping up. He spoke in Paris today. First, who is he?
Prince Reza Pahlavi. So he is the son of the Shah of Iran. He is one of the options, you would say, for someone who would come into power and replace the Ayatollah. And so he is advocating for secular democracy in Iran. He's one of the individuals that have a significant amount of support from Iranians, not all, but he has support from Iranians as well. And so he is, this is, I believe, some of his most recent speeches talking about but we have not heard him, I believe, since the news today of the ceasefire.
No, that was before. We're going to show some of the remarks he gave in Paris today. It does seem like there is a huge PR push. I'm not sure where it's coming from, to get him out there, his name, his voice. And I just kind of wanted to lastly get your thoughts. What's the likelihood that even happens, that he kind of waltzes into Tehran and ushers in a new movement for everyday Iranians? Is that far-fetched?
It's a great question. I have interviewed him. I have interviewed his mother, the Empress of Iran, in depth. And, what they're telling me is, I've really pushed, there were mistakes made when the monarchy was in power. There was a big divide between what seemed to be the rich and the poor at the time. There were lavish parties that were thrown. The monarchy, a monarchist rule is not really something that a lot of countries have anymore. Is that outdated? Is that something that could even work? And what he told me is his idea is a free Iran, where Iran would be participating in a global marketplace. We would have Iranians as well as the diaspora be able to come back and help get Iran back on the world stage. He always tells me how talented Iranians are. Yeah. They're in many different fields, from science to math to arts, so on and so forth. And so he does believe that he has the support that he needs. But I do believe, from what I have heard, that Iranians are ready for some kind of democracy. But there is that fear. And to overthrow a government, as we've seen in the past in Iran in 1979, you have to have a majority of people stand up, and sometimes even foreign intervention. Sometimes that doesn't work, as we saw in the coup with the CIA in Iran. Sure. But I'm just going to end with this and say that Iran is a country, a very rare country, where when you look at the past, you think you're looking at the future. And then when you're looking at the present, you feel like you're looking at the past. It's a very unique situation.
All right. Alina Shirazi, we're going to leave it at that. Always good to see you. Such an interesting perspective. We'll talk soon.
You as well. Thanks, Andrew. See you later.
Okay, in the meantime here, like I said, we did hear from the former Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the Emperor of Iran, the Shah, speaking in Paris.